My name is Reverend Leslie Goodwin. I'm your Associate Minister here at New Vision Center, and I'm delighted to be sharing today. So, in case you didn't watch last week and can't read the giant banners, we are stepping into our new annual theme, which is Every Path Leads Home. And when we're talking about every path leading home, we're talking about this idea that every single thing that we do, whether it is a structured path of spiritual study or working our way in through the New Vision Center provided avenues like sacred service, or the paths of healing like forgiveness and claiming our own wholeness and self-acceptance, and frankly, everything else too. Every relationship is a path. Every stepping into a dream is a path. Every letting something go is a path. And all of those paths lead right to the very center of our own beingness, which is that place of the altar of the Most High at the center of each of us. It leans into this understanding that is prevalent in basically every mystical version of every faith tradition that I've ever found, that there is only one, and that one is indwelling every single being, that the access point to divinity isn't out there or up there or over there, but it's right here, right at the heart of who we each are. And so everything we do is a path that's carrying us deeper into the truth of ourselves. Doesn't that set us up for the most delightful year? I'm so excited about it. So, if we're going to accept this premise, and we are, or at least Reverend Karen and I are, and we've prepared a good year, so I invite you along with us. Then we must start at the very beginning, which is a very good place to start. You see, it begins with do, re, mi. It was not possible that I was not going to do that. I think I'm done now, but I don't promise. We have to start at the beginning. We have to start right where we are, because every journey begins with where we are planted now. We say every journey begins with the first step, but that's not exactly true, is it? Because even the first step requires what? Something to push off from. It requires solid ground beneath us to push off of to launch. If you've ever tried to take a big jump on squishy earth that's a little too wet, you realize you jump and you don't get any traction. You might splash a bit, but you don't actually move forward. And if we're going to go on these paths, whatever these paths are, we want to go somewhere with them, right? We want to be able to count that the ground underneath us is already solid. So there's a premise here that we get to dig into. And that is whatever to quote the song, whatever the dents in your fender, whatever the experiences of life that you've had on the inside of you and on the outside of you, whatever they are, however you have judged them in the past, it's time to recognize that where we stand right now is sacred ground. Who we are, the circumstances in which we find ourselves, whether we are fond of them in this moment or not, whether they are our personal preference or not, we must find acceptance of the sacredness of where we are now if we wish to ever take a step. Take a breath. So why is this hard? Why did everybody get very serious eyes right now? If you could see what I can see, there's a lot of this. And I get it. There are a couple of fears that are operating in the culture, and therefore inherently to a certain extent on the inside of ourselves, on this idea of accepting what is. So the first one is the fear that if we accept who we are in this moment, in this maybe middle of a mess moment, as sacred, divine, not just acceptable, but totally loved and adored by the infinite spirit that is the universe itself. If I accept that about myself now, does that mean I'm never going to grow? I'm never going to expand? I'm never going to heal? I'm never going to get better? I'm never going to be more? Anybody feeling that on the inside of themselves? You don't have to show a hand, but it's okay to acknowledge if you're like, well, but if I'm good enough right now, you don't hear how I talk about my mother. There can be this sense of if you really knew how I talk on the inside of my head, maybe you would not be saying, Reverend Leslie would not be saying to me, you're perfect just as you are. But if we don't believe that divine goodness is present in us, as us, right here and right now, when are we going to be good enough for it? See, either God is all there is, or God is not all there is. But God can't be all there is except for me when I'm having a bad day. It's more complete and more discreet than that. It's either everything or it's not. And in this teaching, we say that it is, in fact, everything. So we're going to do our very best to set that one, just set it down. You don't have to kick it out. We're just going to set it aside for a moment and feel into the next fear. The next fear is that accepting what is means we're settling. It means that what we have is good enough, what we've done is good enough, our job is good enough, our life is good enough, our relationship is good enough, and I'm just not going to have anything more in my life. I'm settling. Just let yourself own it if that's a thing that's up for you. And then we feel into the true truth there, that nothing ever stands still in the divine. The nature of the divine is expansion. We couldn't stay still if we put all of our heart and soul into it. We're very bad at it. We're forever and ever expanding, and so is the entire universe. So we're gonna do our best to take that little fear out. And apparently the fears are gonna live right here. You can pick it up after church if you want it back. Just put it in a little invisible basket. And then the third fear is the idea that letting go of resentments and frustrations about our past means that what happened was okay. And then there's the little tag-on fear that can sometimes happen and therefore we're inviting more of that into our life. We're going to take a big breath for that one. Oh, my friends. I get it. I've been there. I'll be there again for a couple minutes sometime next week probably. But the idea is we don't want to stay there because pushing away, resisting, that's just all holding grudges and resentment and frustration and fear of repetition of bad things that happen to us and guilt and shame. All of that is just resistance. And resistance, take another breath with me while I say this. Resistance is putting thought into the law, which means praying for the thing we don't want. The energy we put into the law brings resonant energy. So when we put what we don't wish into the law through our thoughts and our worries and our grudges and our ruminations and the thoughts that go around, it's just me, right? The thoughts that go and go and go and go and retell the story and retell the story and retell the story about how that person did the thing, right? Just right into the law to bring us more of that experience. So we're going to take that fear out. We're going to put it in the basket. I promise they'll be there for you after service if you want them back. If there is a rush up to the invisible basket, I'm going to laugh really hard. We don't need the fears. There is a lie in our culture. There are a lot of lies in our culture, but there is a specific lie in our culture that says that we need fear to push us to the next thing, that the fear is going to be the motivator that drives us to the next great whatever, that we need the negativity for that to happen. And it's not true. It's not true. Fear is a really great motivator for about 30 minutes. But it doesn't last. It doesn't hold. Ernest Holmes said that, to paraphrase, we don't need to learn through pain anymore. That we've evolved as a species. We've evolved past the need for pain to push us in our evolution. Is it available? Yes. Does it work? Sure, to an extent. To an extent. But it doesn't hold. Positive motivation, the call into our passion and into our drive is much, much more sustainable and enlivening and uplifting than the push of fear and pain. So if we're going to let go of all of those really interesting rules that society has taught us over our 34 years, prove me wrong. You don't know where my driver's license is. If we're going to let go of all of that, then we have to decide what is true. What is true? I've got three. There are more than three, but I've got three that I think we really have to kind of double down, triple down on if we're going to let go of those fears. And the first one is you are enough right now. You are enough right now. Go ahead and let's scroll through your mind for the next 10 seconds all the reason you think I'm full of crap. All of the too tall, too short, too fat, too thin, too educated, uneducated enough, who loved me, who didn't love me, what I've done, where I've been, what I haven't done, the thing I said I was going to do that I didn't do, and the state of the dishes in my sink right now. I don't believe you. I mean, I believe you that list is in your head. I don't think you're making that up. But I don't believe you that any of that has anything to do with the truth of the nature of who you are at the core of your being, which is inherently divine. No matter what religion of origin you come from, something made you, and that something is divine. And it made you out of what? Out of its own substance. It made you out of clay that it made. And if it made the clay, then it made the clay out of itself, and it made you. Poof, you're divine. It made you out of a rib. The rib of what? The rib of the thing that was made of the clay of the thing that it made. Poof. It made you out of what? Star seeds. What made the stars? It made the stars. Every faith tradition, every myth, every story, it comes from the seed of the divine. We are that. There's nothing else to be. It really is that simple. It really is that simple. You are right here, right now, in the midst of the messiest mess you could ever mess up. Sacred, unique, necessary. Emerson said, there must be a need of your soul, else you would not be an organ here. You would not have been created. And I believe him. I don't believe in a divinity that's just making stuff for no good reason. I'm lazy. I don't make stuff for no good reason. That's just true. I mean, I'll make a lot of stuff, but there's going to be a reason, and I'm going to use the thing. I believe that the universe is the same. It's not making things for no reason. It's bringing forth what is necessary for the highest good of life. And when we know this about ourselves, when we open up to it, we soften our definition of what perfection must be. It doesn't mean wholly cooked right now. It can't mean that, because the universe is endlessly expanding, as are we. Wholly cooked is dead. That's very boring. Living is much more interesting. Ernest wrote, we must come to see that everyone is on the pathway of their own individual evolution, and that all of us are struggling towards the light. All of us are on this path, whichever of the infinite paths we choose, to reveal the light that has always been within us. We're not trying to claim something that wasn't ours. We're trying to shed everything that was never ours so that that light is more fully visible to ourselves and everyone else. All right, true truth number 2, everything you've ever done is good enough. Yes, that thing too. The thing you're thinking of that you're like, oh, if she knew, she would not tell me that. Yep, nope, that one too. Because it brought you here. We cannot let go piece by piece of things that we would have preferred to be different in the story of our life and still find ourselves here. If you didn't own and accept and open up to the steps along the path that you've lived, you might not be a spiritual person at all. Who knows? You might have a totally different personality. You might live in a different place. You might have different relationships. It might be dramatically different. But guess what? That person would be enough too, and that path would be enough too. It's not like there's some magical place that we're trying to get to that we missed the turn. Every path leads home. We cannot screw this up. I cannot state this emphatically enough, even though I will try with large arm gestures to clarify. Every path is bringing us exactly where we need to go, even when it's uncomfortable, even when we don't love it in the moment. But when we're able to accept that everything that's happened, everything we've done, there's a purpose and a groundedness and an intentionality on the divine soul level, then we can start seeing it for everyone else too. Even the people who did the things that maybe we didn't prefer. Even the people with whom the relationships didn't work out, or the boss that chose a different person to promote, or the person who hurt us deeply. They too are in the process of uncovering their light, revealing their light. We're all just on a path. Was it Rumi who said we're all just walking each other home? It was either Rumi or Hafiz. We're all just walking each other home. Everything you've done to this point has either moved you forward or given you contrast to show you that you'd rather be on a different path. And that is enough. We do not need to live our life on pogo sticks. We can take the little steps. We can mosey. We can mosey, if you will. There's no race, there's no rush. What we're doing is enough. And the third truth, where you are now is enough. Where you've been is enough, who you are is enough, and where you are now is enough. It is a good thing to let ourselves sink into the goodness that is here now. If we wait to see the goodness until everything is perfect, we will never, ever get to see it. Because we have this beautiful aspect to being human that is, as we approach our goal, as we approach the place that we think is perfect, our consciousness expands and we see a whole new path, and then we want that. I can't tell you how many times in my life I said, if I just had one or two people say, a song that you wrote is valuable and meaningful to me, that would be enough for my whole life. I'm sure I said it out loud 100 times. My husband is nodding. And then I got nominated for a Posse Award with some songwriters that I wrote with, a Positive Music Award for the songwriting, and it was delightful, and it was delicious. And about 4 days later, what's next? It did not, in fact, satisfy me for the entire rest of my life, because we're not built that way. But you better believe I felt the hell out of that gratitude in that moment, and still for that unfoldment. We have to let ourselves feel the good bit by bit. We can't wait for everything, because that moment will never come. Where we are now is the launching point for whatever comes next, and whatever comes next after that, and whatever comes next after that. And that's all it needs to be. So how do we do this? How do we start changing the way we think about all of these things so that we can make friends with the very first step, with the standing ground? How do we do that? First off, be fair. I felt like I was saying that to one of my kids. Be fair. Be fair. Release the urge, and it is an urge, to judge what happened then, how you felt then, whatever then was by what you know now. It's not fair. You're not being nice to my friends. And I think that you, as my friends, you should be nice to my friends. How fair are your expectations of yourself and your life and your path and your heart and your rate of increasing capacity? Are you holding yourself to a standard that you would never hold someone else to? What are you basing your judgments on? Be fair. Be fair with yourself. And you will notice that you start being fairer with the people around you as well. Be mindful. Notice how you're talking to yourself. Notice the language you're using on the inside of yourself. And I invite you to start trying to engage the observer mind. The part of you that sits back and hears the thing you say to yourself and goes, whoa, Jeff, that's not nice. No. Because we know, we call each other on it around here all the time, don't we? My kids will be like, Mom, that does not sound very science of mind. Be mindful. Notice what you're doing. Ernest said in the Science of Mind text, let us daily say to ourselves, perfect God within me, perfect life within me, which is God. Come forth into expression through me as that which I am. Lead me ever into the paths of perfection and cause me to see only the good. Does that mean we pretend like the bad isn't there? No, it's that we intentionally place the bulk of our energy on the good. Why? So that's what we're pushing into the law. So that's what we're inviting into our consciousness. It is a much more pleasant way to live in your own head and heart, I promise. And finally, tell a better story. Tell a better story. Look back on the stories that you tell over and over again that you think are the defining attributes of your life. But tell it from the perspective of who you are now and what you know now. And you will find that those judgments of who was a jerk and who was stupid and all those things start softening into, oh, that sweet girl didn't know yet. That sweet me, that sweet 22-year-old me, bless her heart, she hadn't lived very much yet. And she made some very interesting choices. And look how she grew through that and came out of that. And that sweet girl doesn't need to be mad at the people who expected her to know more than she knew. They were young and dumb too. Bless their hearts too, in the nice way, not in the southern way. When we open ourselves up to telling the better story, it's easy for us to remember we wouldn't be here now and who we are now had that girl, that young girl with 2 babies and a husband who had no business doing that, had she not kept walking forward and reading and learning and trying to meditate and exploring and willing to walk away from safe, tight, closed spaces to find scary open ones. And we all have a version of this story, but we can be kinder in our stories. And when we are, it allows us to make friends with where we are now. And that's the goal. And that's the invitation, to spend this week being mindful, finding the gratitude, telling a kinder, softer story. Because you, my friend, are sacred, and you are worth knowing it. And so it is. opening up every part of ourselves to that yes, yes, yes energy, we just remember who and what we are. That this infinite energy, this divine perfection that has been called by infinite names in every culture through a billion different aspects and personalities and stories and myths and writings and heartfelt connections, that this one that I call Sweet Spirit is right here, right where we are, inside each of us, as us, and transcending us. It is the all good, the all health, the all abundance, the all beauty, the more than enough of every good thingness of life itself. And it is here for us as us now. And so whatever we brought into this space on our hearts and our minds, we surrender it over to the infinite healing presence of this one. And we let it do the heavy work as we just accept the good, accept that it is ours now, accept that we deserve it, accept that we are worth it. Yes. And with a grateful heart, I just claim it is all good for all of us, releasing it into the law and knowing it is done as we say together, and so it is.